And what I'm going to be doing is giving you an introduction to Exo Planet Artwork. What you see in front of me here is an example of that type of artwork. This is actually Albion 6 from the Kalidasia universe. Of course, I'm not going to be doing this today. This is a little bit of a more complex piece than what I can do in the time I have allocated at Penguicon. Because I've actually got 2 sessions of Penguicon, both I believe around 45 minutes long. At least that's what I think it's going to be. That's what I'm planning on. I better check the schedule book to confirm that. But the first 45 minutes or so, at most, is going to be introduction to Exo Planet art. So what I'm going to do here is set a timer for about 35 minutes and figure out exactly what I can get through in that time. So let me get my timer started and I will run through what I'm going to be doing. Now in front of me here, I'm working on a Microsoft Surface Pro 2nd generation. It's running Windows 10 and it's doing that fairly well. I am using the Gimp version 2.8.6, so that version or above would work great for this tutorial. I think they're on 2.8. 15? Something like that. I really should update, but I haven't done that just quite yet. Alright, I got a timer ready to go at 33 minutes. See what I can get done in that time. And before I get started here, one last little thing. What I've got in front of me is a canvas, 3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels, and it's just blank white right now, and we're going to start from there. Let's see what I can get done. Go. Alright, so in the first step to coming in to create an Exo Planet artwork, we're obviously going to just paint the entire background black, because eventually we'd want to put a star field there, but that's probably even going to be beyond the basic tutorial that we're doing right now. So using the fill tool, which is a little paint bucket tool up here, and selecting black as a color, I'm just going to paint the background black. And down here in the lower left hand corner, I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer, and I'm going to create the planet shape. So let's go ahead and bring it up, and I'm going to type in something really fast because my keyboard is sideways. So PS for planet shape. And what you know, right now, obviously I forget, because the way I've got the stream set up is you actually can't see these little dialogues that pop up. So I'm just typing in a new layer name into the box, and I'm leaving the rest of the settings alone and hitting OK. And you're going to see a new layer pop up here on the left hand side. And this is going to be the shape of the planet. We're going to come back to this shape many times to define where the edge of the planet is in terms of cutting off various effects. So we're going to take the ellipse tool up in the upper left hand corner here, and we're going to draw it nice and big. And this particular piece of artwork is going to be kind of the lower, I guess the lower left hand corner of the planet. For basic tutorials, having just a corner of the planet is a little bit easier than trying to draw the entire planet like you saw here with my picture of Albion 6, because this requires some more advanced mapping and cylindrical blah 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 stuff. Okay, so all I'm going to do is take a full white color, use the fill tool, and fill in this circle. And now what you can see here is we've got an outline of the planet, and like I said, we're going to use this all throughout this process in terms of where the planet is and where the planet isn't for terrain and coloring and all sorts of fun stuff. Let's go ahead and create another new layer. We're just going to call this one color. And for this particular tutorial, what I'm going to be doing is creating a planet that's kind of like what Mars probably would have been maybe 2.5 billion years ago or so. Basically, it's a planet that's slowly losing its atmosphere, and it had some water on it that's starting to evaporate. So it's mostly a very vast desert planet. Now, unfortunately, you can't see the change color dialog that pops up here. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a yellowish color, kind of a yellowish reddish color that has very low, relatively low saturation. Even have a little bit of a gray to it. It's almost like a yellowish beige color. And I'm just going to take our fill tool in and fill in my planet. And you can really use whatever color you want for the base color. It's just, once again, it's like the whole Bob Ross thing. Just go ahead and, it's your planet, create it however you want to. Now I'm going to add some basic color textures to it. This is really easy. I'm just going to choose colors that are kind of similar to our base color. Then using the airbrush tool, and I'm going to then go into our tool options, and right here, this little icon I'm hovering over, this is the shape of the brush. And I'm going to actually use the acrylic line of brushes here. There's like 4 of them. I like these for textures, but you can go ahead and use whatever brush you want. There's a lot of other cool shapes you can do neat stuff with, but I find for basic Planet textures, they're pretty cool. Oh, I didn't start my music back up for my background music. That's right, I'm going to leave the background music off. I'm going to add it in post-production. And let me mute the Ingress guys here. Okay, back to what I was doing. That's a distraction. Okay, so with the airbrush, I'm literally just scribbling around, and you're just going to see color starting to appear. There really is no rhyme or reason or pattern to this. I am literally just blocking out some color. And what you'll notice is I still have the planet shape color, the planet shape selected, so I can't actually draw outside here in space, which is just one of the many examples of how we're going to actually use that planet template to kind of constrain our artwork. Alright, let's go ahead and choose some 2 or 3 different colors. Here's a little bit of a bright oranges color, because why not? And let's go with one more color. And it's really the same basic process, right? I'm just choosing a color. I'm changing the brush size over here, right below the brush shape, and just adding color in. You can do different brush strokes and things, and I need to stop that. Yeah, I can go ahead and just mute that 1 second. I don't think I need the audio output from my thing. So, okay, sorry about that. There we go. Alright, so there we go. So we got some basic color thrown down. It's literally just make it up as you go. Now, I'm going to start applying some basic textures. So let's go ahead and start with that process. And I'm going to go create a new layer. Let's jump back over to our layers dialog right here. Create a new layer. I'm going to call this continents. And since I don't feel like typing the whole thing out, it's CT. Alright. Now, obviously, once upon a time, oceans covered this planet, and there would be continents that would be raised off the ocean floor. And I'm actually going to paint the continents in a grayscale color, pretty dark, so we're going to go around value of 29. And I'm just going to block out the shape of the continents using the paintbrush tool, which is different than what we were just using, and a brush of a hardness of 100. And I'm literally just kind of dropping down out where the shape of the continents would have been. And I'm actually going to go select none. So I'm not going to worry about constraining myself to the shape of the planet at the moment. You'll see why I'm going to do that in just a bit. So let's just create a continent here. That looks kind of cool. And I always like the joke, when you're drawing weird shapes like this, make sure you don't draw anything too disturbing or obscene. It's actually surprisingly easy to do. I've done it plenty of times before, my mistake. So just make sure you're paying attention to what you're drawing when you're doing this. So what we've got here is just a very rough shape of the continent, and how I am then now going to go ahead and make this look a little bit cleaner. I'm going to go back to one of the acrylic brushes. I'm going to use acrylic number 1. I'm going to go down pretty small to around a size of 70, and I'm going to turn on a feature down here called Apply Jitter. A jitter makes the brush jump around a little bit. Whoa, I'm really close to the camera when I do that. It's like, whoa, big face in the camera. Okay, and what jitter does is it allows it to kind of the brush jump around a little bit randomly and gives it a little bit of a random pattern to your brush strokes. And what that's going to do now is I'm going to go trace along the edge of the continent, and it's going to give the continent now a little bit of an uneven, somewhat more realistic shape. Because obviously nice smooth edges to a shoreline, to what was an ancient shoreline, probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. And by adding this little random jitter effect, you can kind of make it look a little bit more like it's a natural formation instead of just some guy throwing down shapes in an image editor. And we're going to do one more step to even make it look a little bit more ragged and maybe a little bit more natural looking, but we'll handle that in just a moment. All right, so there we go. I've got a little bit more of a jittered edge to it. And what I'm going to do is take out the eraser tool, same kind of brush, same size, apply jitter, and I pretty much do the same process with the eraser tool. And what this is going to do is kind of do the reverse. Instead of adding color, it's going to take color away, and I'm going to go, and you're going to get a little bit more of a random color, random, shoreline, but it's also going to kind of cut in and give the effect that they were valleys, or not valleys, what do you call these things? Fjords. Fjords and bays and things like that at some point, and it gives it even more of a random, less, man-made, more machine, or, more of a natural look to the shape of the continent. And I'm doing a very coarse job right now just because I want to move along really fast. But if I jump back over here to Albion 6 in just a moment, what you're going to see is the exact same process I just did there. I used all over the place. You can see here in these little islands that's the exact same process I used right there, but with a much, much smaller brush. I'm talking like 4 or 5 pixels versus here where I've got like 70 pixels. It's the same process, but just a lot smaller. Of course, that obviously takes a lot more time. All right, we're gonna use another feature of the GIMP here. Right up next to lock, there's a little grid looking thing. That's lock transparency. And what that's gonna do is prevent me from adding additional color pixels to this layer. And this basically means I can't actually add more pixels. I can only change the color of the pixels that are already there. And what I'm going to do is go a little bit brighter gray color, take out the airbrush, that's the one we used before, let's go in acrylic 4 for making some textures, and I'm just going to go ahead and apply some jitter, and I'm just going to kind of run across the surface, and this is going to give just a very mild texture to the surface of this what were the ancient continents. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Nothing fancy. No, I probably should save it, shouldn't I? I'm just going to call it Y because I don't want to spend time typing stuff. Yes, always save your work, especially in the GIMP. It's pretty stable, but every now and then it does periodically crash and really cause some really nasty problems. Okay, so let's keep moving along here. I am just going to go ahead and keep this as it is. Yeah, let's just go ahead and keep this as it is. And I'm going to use probably the coolest feature in the GIMP for creating Exo Planet art. It is a filter that is called, I'll look it up in just one second. Not distort. Yeah, it's under distort. Filters, distort, emboss. Emboss goes ahead and takes this grayscale color we just created here and turns it into an elevation terrain map. So unfortunately, like I said, on the stream you can't see the emboss dialog as it pops up, but it is a fairly simple dialog. It's only got a few options to it. All right, so first up is the azimuth. Yeah, the azimuth, which is basically saying what angle is this light source coming from. Because what's going to do is it's going to kind of imagine a light source coming from an angle and draw the terrain based on that light source. Now our light source is going to come somewhere from down here in the bottom. So let's go around 260 degrees. So azimuth, we're going to make it 260 degrees about. Elevation, how high in the sky is that light source? I am going to put it kind of low, around low 30s. And depth, basically we're saying how deep is our terrain, at least I believe that's what that's for. I'm going to make it like a 17. And I'm going to hit OK. And what's going to happen is you're going to see this thing you just drew turn into another grayscale layer with highlights and shadows on it. It takes a moment or two, but it's really cool what this thing can do. And it really is, this emboss filter I'm using here is pretty much the foundation of a lot of the Exo Planet artwork techniques I'm going to be showing off here. Unfortunately, it is also kind of the slowest. So we play the wave game for a little while. There we go. So we got a much brighter layer, but you can see if you zoom in, The faces along your continent there that were facing the light are now white, and the ones that are facing away are black, because that is how the human brain perceives light and shadows and elevation on a 2D plane. When you see an area that's lighter than areas around it, your brain kind of assumes that it's basically facing a light source. When you see an area of the drawing where the light is darker than the areas around it, your brain kind of assumes that area is facing away from the light source. And based on those factors, your brain's going to be able to imagine this is a highland area of the planet. But of course, right now it's gray and the totally wrong color of the planet. So how do we fix that? Let's go back to our layers over here, and I'm going to uncheck the lock transparency because we don't need that anymore right now. And sometimes if I leave that checked, weird things happen. And okay, now I've got that buzzing at me, but I don't know how to stop that because I need the audio checking. Anyway, I am going to just turn the audio down over here to stop that from buzzing. Okay, and that's why this is a practice. See what works, what doesn't. Okay, so go to our layer here, and now at the top of the layer dialog box, see this thing called mode, and it's got a normal next to it. I'm going to change it to hard light layer. What hard light layer does is it makes the layer that you're currently at either make the layer below it either lighter or darker depending on the color. Basically, dark values will make the layer below it darker, i.e. shadows. Light colors will make the area below it lighter. And what I'm going to do is now tweak some parameters to make it look like this is actually a mountain highland region. So I'm going to go to colors up here in the menu, and I'm going to choose levels. Levels are going to let us set what is white and what is black. And based on kind of tweaking these values here, I'm going to be able to make it look like we're seeing a bit of a highland region. Right now it's a little too bright, so I'm going to turn down the white levels. And the white levels, if you look under output levels, are right now at 255. I'm just going to drag that down, and a little too, now it's going to make it look a little bit darker. We want it to be more or less about the same color as the area below. That's pretty good right there. So what I did there is I just brought the white levels down a little bit, and it made the highland area look a little bit closer to the base colors of the planet below it. That's good for now, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. So what your brain is probably seeing there is you're seeing a highland region. If you're seeing a lowland region, then your brain's got the light source flipped around its head, but we'll have to fix that later. Okay, so you got some highland regions here, and you can just kind of stack this effect atop each other again and again and again to get much more complex features like you see here, for example, inside Albion 6, or even way back here, as you can see, I'm using a little bit in the nebulas to give the idea that there is some depth to the nebulas. But let's jump back to our planet we'll work on here, and I am going to add in the lowland regions here. I'm going to add the effect of a very dry, cracked desert. So let's create a new layer, and let's just call it D for desert. And we're going to go with a kind of a dark gray color. Let's get our paintbrush tool out. And I'm going to use the brush which is called Cell 1. This is pretty much a brush designed to mimic the human or biological cells, but I found it actually can be used to mimic the look of a desert fairly well. And I'm literally just going to start drawing it like this, just kind of smearing it all over the place. More or less no real rhyme or reason to how I'm doing it. That's fine, because what you want to do to help sell the illusion that you've got an actual planet here is you want to make the terrain kind of slope towards the edge of the planet, because obviously when you're looking at the edges of the planet here, the terrain is going to be look a little bit distorted than when you're looking straight on. There's several ways to do this in the Gimp. I'm going to show you the easy way that's quick and simple, that doesn't require basically about a 45-minute tutorial instead of the workflow alone. Albion 6 was done with the proper, really awesome way. Okay, so I've literally just scribbled down a bunch of colors here. Not even a bunch of colors, just a bunch of shapes that kind of can pass as a dry, cracked desert. And there's a tool we're going to use here in the Gimp. We go up to Filters, choose Distorts, and we want to do lens distortion. Lens distortion is going to cause the edges of this layer to kind of curve in a little bit and make it look like they're kind of curving away from the camera around the shape of the planet. It's kind of an approximation, but it'll look good enough for just a simple tutorial like this. There's a lot of options here in this dialog box, which unfortunately, once again, you can't see. But what you're going to do is you're going to crank up the main slider all the way to the right, the edge slider all the way to the right, and this is going to give you the most distortion. You want to choose the X shift and move that one not all the way to the right, quite a bit, because you want to see how you want to try to approximately match the shape of your planet in the preview window, which unfortunately you can't actually see the planet in the preview window, so you're kind of just making it up as you go. And Y shift, you want to move that all the way to the right, all the way to the left, which is going to give you or a little bit to the left, and it's going to kind of give you the illusion that you're dealing with the lower left-hand corner of the planet. Like I said, once again, this is kind of an approximation, but it's about the best I can do in a 45-minute tutorial. So once again, main's all the way up, or all the way to the right, edge is all the way to the right, X shift is pretty far to the right, Y shift is about halfway to the left. I'm gonna hit OK, and you're gonna see it kind of the terrain there wrap around the shape of the planet. Alright, so we got something that's kind of approximately the shape of the planet. It's not quite right, but we can fix that. We're going to choose the scale layer here, which is the little small square to big square with a line. And I'm just going to click anywhere inside this layer, and I'm really going to make sure on the scale dialog, there's a little chain link. Make sure the chain link is connected so the X and Y are being scaled together. And now I'm just kind of dragging the corners out so that, there we go. So this way now, this kind of cell-like terrain mostly covers the shape of it covers a little bit beyond the edge of the planet. So this is very important. We're going a little bit beyond the edge of the planet. Hit scale, and it's going to scale itself up here in a minute. And this is why I had that planet layer, or the planet shape layer early on. Let's see how I'm doing in time. Only 12 minutes remaining. There's no way I can do this in 45 minutes. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing here now, you can see that I have the kind of desert basin terrain, but it's extended beyond the shape of the planet. This is where that planet shape layer comes into. So let's go back to our planet shape layer, select that. I am going to choose the select by color tool, which is a little blue, red, green square with a little finger pointing at it. And I'm going to select empty space. This is going to select everything but the planet. I'm going to go back up to our desert layer, hit edit, cut. This is going to delete everything outside the shape of the planet. And that is why we have this planet layer thing. It lets you clean stuff up outside the shape of the planet. Now also, we don't want this terrain to be over top of our highlands, only our lowlands. So I'm going to select now the continent area, and then very carefully we want to select where the continents are. It's probably easy. Actually, no, we're going to select, once again, let's select in the empty space over here of the planet. And now what I've got is everything but the continents selected. So let's go select invert, and what that just did is now it flopped the selection. So now when you go from everything but continents and invert it, what do you have left? You only have the continents selected. So let's go back to our desert layer, hit edit cut, and this is going to remove this weird basin terrain from inside the continents. And just like that, you can see now it's only in the areas which are not continents. So let me save this. And once again, I'm going to apply the emboss filter. So let's go filters, distorts, emboss. The settings from last time should be saved, the same light source. I'm going to reduce the depth though and put the depth down to about 12 and hit OK and let it do its thing. Now, while it's doing this, the emboss filter creates an elevation map where the brighter the value of the color, the higher it is. But we're creating basins, not ridges. So we got to do one more step here to transform these things from basically being a bunch of ridges into basins. So let me finish this up here and I'll show you what we're going to do with that. Once again, we are playing the waiting game. Alright, there we go. We've got our emboss filter done, but like I said, what it's done is created ridges, not basins. So how do we fix that? Well, we wait for the Gimp to stop freezing up. And we're going to keep our desert layer selected. I'm actually going to go select none. I don't know what happened there. I am going to duplicate the layer, and I'm just going to keep this layer off for later. This is actually going to be used in the advanced tutorials. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate the layer. I already did that. I already said that. So we're going to go back to have our original layer selected. I'm going to go colors invert. This is going to make white become black and black become white. Because remember, your brain perceives elevation as light source, white, then black. If you reverse that order and go light source, black, then white, you now perceive negative elevation, like a valley. It's still kind of tough to see because there's a little bit of a magic eye thing going on here. We kind of have to stare the right way. But what we can do is go colors, levels, and start fiddling with the output levels we did before, and to kind of reduce the brightness a little bit of the valleys, and just kind of reduce everything down. And when you fiddle with it enough, your brain's going to start to kind of see it. Oh wait, I did that backwards. 1 second. Hit cancel. I forgot one step here. Under layer mode of the desert layer, go ahead and choose hard light again. There we go. Now we go and start playing around with the levels. And probably for valleys, like turn down the white quite a bit, turn down the black a little bit by raising it up. And once you play around with it enough, what should happen when you get the kind of the right settings going is that your brain should start to see it as valleys and not, there we go, my brain just clicked right there. It's weird how it does it. Your brain will almost like click and flip it around. Now I'm seeing everything as valleys and basins instead of highlights. And that is how you can use the emboss tool to create depressions as well as basically lowlands and depressions and valleys, as well as highlands, ridges, and mountains, and so on. Alright, so let's see if I can get a few more things in here. Because at Penguicon I have 45 minutes to do the presentation. I would like to have a few minutes for discussion about things, but that may be pushing it. But also I can have people ask questions as I'm going along and kind of try to answer those as I'm talking. So I'm going to create an ocean. So let's hit W, or new layer, W for water. And then I'm going to choose a blue color that's kind of a little bit gray, a little bit grayish. And I'm just going to go ahead and take a solid brush, 100 hardness, and let's just draw out where there's still a little bit of water left in the planet. Oops, turn off jitter. So let's just, there we go. So there we go, that's where there's going to be some water left over at this point. And a lot of this is kind of repeating what we've done in the past. Let's go back to our planetary shape layer, select by color, select outside the planet, go back to the water layer, edit cut. There we go, we trimmed out the water out of the outside shape of the planet. Let's do select none. Select our eraser tool. We're going to go and choose a brush hardness of 50. So we're going to have a little bit of fading around the edges of the brush, so it's not a solid brush that we've been using. Go down to a size of about 34. Have jitter turned on with maybe a size of about 1.5 to 2. And let's run it along our shoreline here. And what that's going to do, just like how we did with the highlands to create the illusion of some sort of shoreline, we're going to do the exact same thing here with the water, and it's literally the same effect, and it makes it look the same way, where it gives it a much more natural look. And what I'm going to do then is cut the size of the brush down by half, maybe add another 1 to 2 on the jitter level. And let's do that one more time and make it even more random and chaotic, and therefore make it even look a little bit more of like a natural water source. And finally, let's go back to our water layer, lock transparency, which once again prevents me from adding additional pixels. To use a deeper blue color, let's get out our spray brush, turn off jitter, and I'm going to take kind of a large circular brush here, and I'm just going to go very gently in the middle here and make it look like there's some deeper water out here. And you know, you can fiddle around with different colors to do different things. And just as a quick little thing, I'm taking the smudge tool up here. It's a little finger pressing down. This is one of the ways you can blend colors. And it's going to let me kind of blend, and then by kind of going along with the, making circular motions along the dark lines there, along the dark blue section, I'm able to kind of blend the darker and lighter colors together. And it gives the illusion that there's still some deeper, darker water out there on this planet. Alright, so I'm going to be running out of time here. So I'm going to try to show two more important aspects to planets, which are one, an atmospheric effect, to show that there's light passing through, there's still somewhat of an atmosphere left in this planet, and the terminator, which is a line that defines night from day. So let's create an atmospheric effect. New layer. Let's call it A for atmosphere. And I want to choose a cool color for the atmosphere. Let's make it, I like to make it in these desert planets kind of something similar to the ground color, like a little bit of a copperish gold color. So I'm going to choose that. We're going to go with a hard 100 brush, something pretty big size-wise. I'm going to go around 600, and I'm going to trace the outline of the planet. This is a very, I screwed it up. I'm going to try to trace it as close as possible, and this is kind of a very dirty way of creating a planet's atmosphere, but it'll work. Alright, there we go. Because as light passes through the atmosphere of a planet, you're going to notice it would actually give it, it kind of gives a little bit of a haze. It, frankly, it just kind of looks cool. I really don't know the science behind it, but it does look cool. So what I want to do then is also, as the atmosphere approaches the top and right edges of the artwork, I want to make it kind of get thinner. So I'm just on the layer selection tab here, right below the layer modes, you have opacity. Opacity does what it says it does. It makes the layer a little bit thinner. So what I'm going to do is make it thinner so I can see the shape of the planet along with the atmosphere I just drew. And I'm, undo that, because I had jitter still turned on for the eraser. I want to turn that off. And I'm going to, as you can see, I'm kind of just roughly just, that didn't look very good. And I'm kind of trying to do my best to give it a little bit of a curve appeal, or curve shape, approximately as it passes close to the edges of the planet. So therefore, only ideally the areas where the light source is passing through is going to actually have the atmosphere effect to it. Alright, so what do we do next? We want to go and back to our planetary shape layer, select by color, and choose the actual planet area itself. Go back to our atmosphere layer. We're going to add a huge blur. So go filters, blur, Gaussian blur, and for radius, choose a huge number like 500. Then click on vertical to make it the same, and let's hit OK. And let it do its thing. This is going to make it blur inwards towards the planet. There we go. So now the atmosphere effectively fades away. And what I'm going to do now is let's go select, grow, and we only want a really thin layer outside the planet. So let's try a grow of 50 pixels. And this is going to make the basically the selection expand outward by 50 pixels. And I'll show you, okay, that looks pretty good. So it's a nice thin layer of the planet there. And I'm going to go select, invert. So now what I've done is I've selected everything but basically 50 pixels from the surface of the planet, and I'm going to go edit cut. And this is going to remove all this excess atmosphere. So you're only really left with a tiny little layer near the surface of the planet. Select none, and we can probably go in with a hardness 50 brush, a little bit smaller size, and kind of clean up our messy, oh, what am I doing here? Why is that not working? Oh, it is. and kind of clean up our edge of our atmosphere there. Well, that's 33 minutes. I can probably these last few steps here a little bit because we still got a little bit of work on the atmosphere, not much. All right, there we go. So let's give it a little bit of a cleaner slope as it slopes towards the planet. Undo that last one, it's too much. Okay, what I'm gonna do then is go back to Filters, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm gonna blur it outwards again, but this time I'm only gonna have a radius of about 35 pixels. And this is basically to blur the upper levels of the atmosphere as they are away going off into space. And it's gonna eliminate this nice hard line that's running along the planet. There we go, so there's a little bit of fuzziness to that atmosphere level. And we're going to go back to our layer, and you can change the opacity really to whatever value you see fit, to whatever you think it makes it appropriate. And it really does help to sell it. It really does help to kind of really get these edges very smooth as possible. And there's other tools that you can do to help along with this, but you know, I've got 45 minutes to give you the basics of this stuff. So there we go. So I got a very small atmospheric bubble, and you can see if I jump back over here to Kalidasia 6, you can get a better idea of how it should look. As you can see, it fades off pretty good, both from the top and the bottom. It fades off pretty cleanly. Last thing I'll do here is show you how to draw the terminator. The terminator, of course, is, as I mentioned before, the distance between night and day. So T for terminator, we're creating a new layer. Let's take out our ellipse tool, and I'm creating a fairly large sphere, and you know, and I'm pretty much just kind of let's do something kind of like that. You can see here now where I've got most of the planets selected, but there's still an area up here that's going to become nighttime. So let me go ahead and choose select invert. Now what I've got is this area to the top that's all covered. This area of the top right, so pretty much the top and the right side area up here, this is all going to become nighttime because I've selected the area outside the sphere, because the sphere is pretty much where the star is casting light onto the planet. We're going to choose just, pure black's fine. Let's fill this area in with black. And of course it's going to fill the area in black, but it's also going to make it a very sharp dividing line, which if you had a planet that didn't have much of an atmosphere, or sort of relatively thin atmosphere, a nice sharp line would look pretty good. That's kind of like how the moon looks, or probably to a lesser extent Mars, which has a very thin atmosphere. But I still want to have, this planet still does have enough atmosphere to hold on to some water. So I'm going to actually go ahead and blur this line and make it look like there's actually a transition from day to night. Because the atmosphere is what scatters light, that actually creates that transition of day to night and makes it twilight. So let's go to make sure our layer is still selected. Once again, this is just a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And you can really choose any level you see fit, because obviously, like I said, it really depends on how thick you imagine the atmosphere to be. I'm going to try 150 pixels, and let's see how that looks. And there we go, we got a nice soft blur going on. But last thing I want to do is make sure that I delete the areas of the terminator that are actually off in this space, because that'll cause problems when I go on to add stars and other things in the background. So to finish that off, select our planetary shape layer, and what do? Same thing we've done all along. Select by color, choose outside the planet, go back up to our terminator layer, hit edit cut, and there we go. That will remove the terminator from beyond the shape of the planet. You're not going to really see anything because of course it's a black background, but if you go ahead and hide your background, you can now see that the terminator ends with the planet like it should. Oh, and with that, you've really got a lot of the core basic ideas of how you create exoplanet art. There's a few more things, new techniques I really didn't show here that can do some really cool stuff that I'll probably save for the advanced courses coming up later here at Penguicon, which, I'm just pretending like I'm at Penguicon, why not? But a lot of the effects to create something like this are literally doing what I just did there again and again and again with more and more levels of detail, more colors, just trying different input values to get different output values. And you can just fiddle around with things and see what kind of cool stuff you can do. Why don't I, with a few minutes left, if you want to pretend like, I'll pretend like there's an audience here, and if you have any questions, you can ask away. And I'm going to draw clouds. This is one last thing I can do. So I'm going to draw those below the atmosphere layer, because usually clouds are in the atmosphere. Okay, create a new layer, call C. I am going to make these clouds, once again, be kind of a yellowish color, but also more or less gray. And all I'm really going to do is take out the airbrush tool with a mostly gray with a little bit of yellow color to it. Let's start with a brush of a hardness of, we'll do 25, because we want these clouds to be kind of fluffy. And I'm literally just going to be just kind of drawing along shapes here, approximately as if there was like a shape to the, give the clouds kind of a little bit of a curved shape, look like they're wrapping around the atmosphere a little bit. If you want to get fancy, you can make them a little bit more thicker towards the terminator when they get approached more directly on from the view angle you're looking at. But that, of course, is all just kind of optional, just a little bit of fluffiness. And there you go. That's layer 1 of clouds. And what you're going to do, add more layers. You're going to keep going up and making a little bit brighter white color and reduce the size of your brush. And then just kind of color in some higher elevation clouds. And you can see now you've got a little bit more of a brighter color in where the gray was. Let's do that one more time. So let's go a little bit brighter, a little bit smaller, and just kind of stay now within the white areas, the whiter areas anyway. And then finally, we're going to use the smudge tool. I showed that once before with blending the colors down here for the water. We can take the hardness 25 brush, which basically is a brush with a lot of fading around the edge, make it a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to go into these clouds and just mangle them pretty much to give them a much more random appearance all over the place. And that's going to eliminate the very clean, smooth brush strokes that you're seeing right now. And it's just I'm doing all sorts of different types of brush strokes, circular strokes, long, kind of drawn out ones, doing like weird zigzag things. And this is just to give the clouds a much more random, more natural appearance to how they are. Also, if you go ahead and you kind of give them, if you go ahead and make some really long, kind of streaky brush strokes, it does give the illusion like there's some high level wind pushing them along in some direction. Whereas more of a random appearance probably implies them more just kind of sitting there nice and happily and not being rushed along to wherever clouds go on this hellhole of a planet. And there we go. That'll be pretty much enough to call the basic tutorial done. Like I said, everything I've shown you here can really just be used in more detail-oriented ways, more layers, just more different various input parameters and things like that. You can really do a lot of really cool effects for creating different types of terrain for these planet artworks, these types of planet artwork. In the advanced course, what I'm going to do is show you how to create a star in the picture here and add some of the glow from the star. Probably show the star reflecting on the ground a little bit. How to add some edge highlighting to the basins. Because one of the limitations with the technique I'm showing you here is brighter areas are just less contrast, they're more white. There's other ways to make bright areas look more bright with more color, and it gives a more variety, cooler effect. Let me see if I can find an example of it. Like up here, for example, this weird little mountain range thing here on Albion 6. How I make some of the area faces of the mountains look brighter but without being whiter, if that makes sense. There's still a lot of contrast and color to it. Also, I've got some little rivers here, but you know, and I think I'll probably also at least just demonstrate to let you know that it exists is something called the map to sphere functionality, which is the proper way to take a flat piece of terrain and map it to a sphere, and it allows you to do this full shape planet artwork with proper edge folding effects. But to do that right really takes about an hour of tutorial in itself to show you how I set up the workflow. So I actually got 2 different files going back and forth in order to get everything lined up properly. And in case you were wondering, this particular artwork here with Kalen 6, no, not Kalen, Albion 6, stupid Aragorn Empire number system. Albion 6, this probably took me about 8 to 12 hours to do, and but that was also playing around with some new techniques, so I probably could redo it again in 5 or 6 hours if I really wanted to. And with this kind of artwork, it really comes down to the more time you spend, the more detail you put into it, the cooler the end product is going to look. So with that, thank you for watching. If you have any questions about the Kalidasia universe and to see how all these different pictures fit into it, you can head over to Kalidasia.com. I'm Jason, the creator of Legends of Kalidasia, which is a space combat miniatures game. Got some of the old figures sitting right here. Where's a new one? Here he is. This is the new one I haven't shown off on the internet yet. So free little tutorial here. This is the new El Soren Hammerhead frigate. It's one of the brand new 2016 Kalidasia miniatures that are going to be rolling out this year. And I guess, yeah, that'll work for now. We've got some more big announcements coming on not too far. But once again, I'm Jason. Thank you for watching. Oh, and why don't I say, yeah, if you're in the Michigan, Ohio, Indiana area, and Penguicon does sound interesting, you can head over to penguicon.org. I'll spell that out because it's a made-up word. Penguicon. Penguicon. Penguicon.org. And that is April 29th through May 1st in Southfield, Michigan. All right, for real this time, I'm Jason. Thanks for watching.